Smoke floated above the battlefield like dark ghosts whispering secrets of the dead. The air smelled of burnt metal, blood, and crushed dreams. Captain Ray Mercer stood among the ruins of what used to be a peaceful city. Now only shattered buildings and scattered bodies remained. The war between humans and the Kraloks had lasted only 6 weeks, but in that short time, both sides had lost far more than they ever expected. Ray had been a soldier for 10 years. He'd seen conflict on Mars, the outer colonies, and the border moons, but nothing prepared him for this. The Kraloks had attacked without warning. Their weapons melted armor like butter. Their ships moved through the sky like shadows. It was a massacre in the beginning. Humans were losing fast, until Ray made a move no one expected. He disobeyed orders. He crossed into enemy territory alone. His mission wasn't to fight, it was to talk. He found the Kraloks' commander during a break in the battle, an old alien leader named Tharzal, known for his hatred of all humans. Ray walked into the Kraloks' camp unarmed. He was supposed to die that night. Instead, something strange happened. Tharzal listened. Maybe it was because of the way Ray spoke. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, tired, honest, full of pain. Or maybe, just maybe, Tharzal was tired of war too. Whatever the reason, a truce was made. Ray walked back alive, carrying the first peace agreement between the two races. He became a legend in the fleet, not for killing, but for stopping the killing. But peace comes with a price, and Ray was about to find out just how strange and personal that price could be. 3 days after the war ended, Ray received a private message. It came from Tharzal himself. The message was short, written in broken human words. Come to Old Palace Ruins, North Ridge, sunrise. Bring no weapons, I repay debt. Ray didn't understand what debt. Still, curiosity won. At sunrise, he climbed aboard a small skiff and flew toward the ridge. The ruins stood tall like broken teeth in the sand. Long vines wrapped around shattered stone. It was a place of old power, forgotten by most. Tharzal stood alone in the center, wearing ceremonial robes made of woven scales. His long arms were crossed, and 2 female figures stood behind him, faces hidden beneath dark veils. You saved my life, Tharzal said without greeting. You stopped my soldiers, you stopped me. You brought honor back to my name, and I cannot live without repaying such a debt. Ray shook his head. I didn't do it for a reward, Tharzal, he said. I did it so people would stop dying. But a debt is still a debt, Tharzal replied. He turned and motioned to the 2 figures behind him. The taller one stepped forward. She removed her veil, revealing emerald skin and glowing silver eyes. She was beautiful by any measure, human or alien. Her gaze held strength, intelligence, and something else Ray couldn't name. This is my wife, Sil, Tharzal said. She is yours, as part of the debt. Ray blinked, unable to speak. Before he could respond, the second figure stepped forward. This one was younger, barely past what humans would call teenage years. Her eyes were softer but still bright. This is my daughter, Yuli, Tharzal said with deep breath. She is yours too. Ray took a step back. You're offering me your family? Yes, Tharzal said, his voice steady. It is Kralok's tradition. When a male's life is saved by another, especially by an enemy, his most precious bondmates are given as life gift. Ray looked from the wife to the daughter. Both were silent, calm, waiting. No fear in their eyes, only acceptance. He didn't know what to say. I can't accept this, he finally whispered. But Sil, the wife, stepped closer. You already have, she said softly. You just don't know it yet. The wind shifted through the ruins, carrying the scent of alien flowers. Yuli took her veil off slowly, her silver eyes watching Ray closely. She wasn't afraid of him. She was curious and maybe, just maybe, something else. Ray stood still, surrounded by the echoes of war and the strange gift of peace. What had he stepped into? And why did a part of him not want to walk away? Ray didn't sleep that night. He sat outside his temporary quarters on the edge of the alien settlement. The moon above was purple and huge, casting long shadows across the sand. Sil and Yuli were inside the shelter he had been given, silent. Since they arrived, they did not act like prisoners or victims. They moved with quiet grace, like they knew something he didn't. Ray kept thinking about Tharzil's words. A debt must be paid. But how could this be called repayment? Giving away your wife and daughter to a man who once fought your people. Ray had seen many strange customs across the stars, but nothing like this. He stood and walked to the door. It opened with a soft hiss. Inside, Sil sat on a floor mat, reading. From a glowing crystal, Yuli was in the corner, sketching symbols into the dust with her finger. They both looked up when he entered. Neither seemed surprised. "I don't want you to feel forced," Ray said, keeping his voice calm. "I didn't ask for this." Sil placed the crystal down and stood slowly. Her movements were careful, elegant. "You saved our people from a long war," she said. "You saved Tharzal's name and ours. You may not understand our traditions, but we do." Ray frowned. "And your daughter?" "She's too young to be part of this." Yuli stood now, facing him without fear. "I am old enough by Kralok's right," she said softly. "I know what this means. But do you want it?" he asked, looking into her silver eyes. There was a long silence, then Yuli gave a small nod. "I chose to follow tradition," she said, "not because I must, but because I believe you are not like others." Ray turned and walked outside again. The stars felt too close. His thoughts were loud in his head. Back on Earth, this would be madness, but this wasn't Earth. This was a planet shaped by ancient honor. The next day, a messenger arrived. A small Kralok's boy with blue skin and glowing veins. He handed Ray a crystal message, bowed, and left without a word. Ray activated the message. Tharzal's voice echoed from the crystal. "There are those who do not agree with the life debt. Some believe you insult our blood. There is danger coming. Prepare." Ray crushed the crystal in his hand. The dust fell like ash between his fingers. So it wasn't over. Not everyone wanted peace, and now someone wanted him dead. He ran back to the shelter. Sil was already up, her eyes sharp. Yuli had a knife in her hand, small but deadly looking. "They sent the message," Sil said. "They're coming tonight." Ray looked at her in surprise. "You knew?" "Yes," she answered calmly. "Tharzal warned me before, but he believed we could protect ourselves." "I don't even have a weapon," Ray said, checking his pack. "You have us," Sil replied, her voice steady. Ray stared at her, not sure what she meant, but then Yuli walked to him and handed him the knife. Her hands were steady, her eyes clear. "We protect each other now," she said. As night fell, the shadows grew longer. Ray placed traps outside the entrance, using what little gear he had. Sil scattered fine red dust on the ground. Ray didn't ask what it was. He figured it wasn't for decoration. Yuli stood on the roof with a small energy bow, silent and focused. When the attack came, it was fast and brutal. 4 Kralok's warriors moved through the dark like predators. Ray spotted them first. He threw a flash charge, blinding 2 of them. Sil jumped from the shadows and stabbed one clean through the throat. Yuli's arrow pierced the shoulder of another before he reached the door. Ray fought the last one hand to hand. He barely dodged a blade to the neck, but he moved faster, his training kicking in with a single twist. He disarmed the enemy and drove the knife into his side. The warrior let out a strange hiss and collapsed. Silence returned to the desert. Only their heavy breathing broke the stillness. Blood glowed faintly on the sand like liquid stars. Ray looked at Sil and Yuli. They were both calm, not shaken. They were trained, prepared, deadly. "You're not just bondmates," he said, catching his breath. "You're warriors." Sil wiped her blade clean. "We were always more than what Tharzal showed," she said. "But now you're starting to see." Yuli stepped beside him. "We belong to you, yes," she whispered. "But you also belong to us now." Ray looked at the dead enemies around them, and he realized this wasn't a gift. It was a beginning of something larger. Something dangerous, and maybe something worth fighting for again. The bodies were burned before sunrise. It was part of the Kralok's code. No enemy, even in death, should be left to rot. Ray helped Sil and Yuli carry the attackers beyond the ridge. They worked without speaking, without crying. It felt more like a ritual than a cleanup. The sky turned pale orange as they poured blackroot oil and lit the fire. The flames danced in silence. Ray watched their eyes, they didn't blink. He wondered how many times they had done this before. When they returned to the shelter, a new message waited for them. This one came not as a crystal, but as a visitor. A Kralok's female, old and dressed in gold robes, stood at their door. Her skin was marked with deep ceremonial scars. She looked at Sil first, then at Ray. "I am Mother Ivara," she said, her voice sharp like stone scraping metal. "I speak for the Council of Flame, and I come with a choice." Ray stood tall, but cautious. "Go on, you can leave," she said. "Alone, unharmed. The humans will call you hero again, and the Kraloks will erase your name from the records." She paused, eyes narrowing. "Or you stay and face what your presence has started." This union of life bond was not accepted by all. Some see it as an insult, others as prophecy. Ray looked at Sil. Her face was unreadable, but her hands had balled into tight fists. Then at Yuli, who had stepped behind him, not in fear but in quiet readiness. "What happens if I stay?" Ray asked, his voice steady. The elder's face was still. "You will be tested, hunted, challenged, and if you survive, you may become something far more dangerous than a soldier." Ray nodded once. "I'm not leaving." Mother Ivara studied him for a long time, then gave a single sharp nod and walked away. The wind carried her robe behind her like a shadow fading into the dust. That evening, they moved deeper into the ruins. The shelter was no longer safe. Tharzul had sent a hidden signal to Sil coordinates to an ancient outpost, a place forgotten even by the Kralok cities, a place built in the days before technology ruled their lives. They traveled by foot, avoiding major roads. Sil led the way, her senses sharp as ever. Yuli walked beside Ray, asking quiet questions about Earth. He told her about oceans, music, dogs, and real coffee. She listened with wide eyes and the hint of a smile. When they reached the outpost, it was buried beneath rock and root. The entrance was hidden under a stone platform covered in moss. Sil pressed her hand against a symbol carved into the wall. It glowed faintly and slid open, revealing a tunnel lit by old green lights. Inside, the air was dry but clean. The walls were lined with weapons, books, and energy stores, ancient and powerful. This was not just a hideout, it was a war temple. Ray stepped through the hall, feeling something stir deep inside. Not fear, not regret, something else, purpose, maybe. "We trained here," Sil said quietly, "before we were bondmates to Tharzul. Before the politics, before the titles." Yuli walked to a stand and picked up a long staff. It hummed in her hand. "Here, we were not daughters or wives," she said. "We were warriors of the Black Flame." Ray turned to face them. "Then it's time I stop pretending I'm just a visitor." Sil raised an eyebrow. "You're ready to fight with us?" Ray nodded. "No, I'm ready to fight as one of you." For the next 7 days they trained together. Ray learned their fighting style fluid, unpredictable, and brutal. He taught them close-range tactics from Earth. They sparred until they bled. They laughed, they burned meals. They bled again, and slowly something changed. The bond between them wasn't just tradition anymore. It was something real. At night, Ray lay beside them, not as a soldier, not as a master, but as someone who belonged finally, fully. Then on the 8th night, the warning came, a burst of static on the cum crystal, followed by one voice, deep, distorted, filled with hate. "You should have left when you had the chance, human. Now we come for you, and those who stand beside you will fall with you." Ray clenched his fist. He turned to Sil and Yuli, both already armed. No more running, no more confusion. If the fire was coming, he was ready to burn with it. Asterisk. The ground shook before the sky changed color. It wasn't thunder, it wasn't weather, it was war again. This time, it was personal. Ray stood on the balcony of the old war temple, watching dust clouds rise in the distance. Enemy ships had entered the outer zone, flying low and fast. They weren't from Tharzil's command, these were rebels. Pure-blood Kralox warriors who rejected peace. They called themselves the True Flame. And they wanted the old ways back, no life bonds with humans, no treaties, no shame. Syl moved beside Ray, her armor tight across her shoulders. She handed him a small circular band. He looked at it, confused. "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's a symbol. You wear it. They'll know you stand with us. Not as a human visitor, but as a flame-bound." Ray slipped the band onto his wrist. It tightened, glowing red for a second before fading. It was warm, alive almost, and heavy with meaning. Yuli stood behind them, loading power cells into a blaster. Her eyes were serious now, no more quiet smiles. She moved like a soldier, precise, quick, and calm. Ray couldn't believe she was the same girl who had once drawn in the dust. They didn't have many weapons, but they had the temple. Its walls were thick, its tunnels deep. Traps were hidden in every corner. And more than that, they had each other. The first wave came at night. 5 attackers, fast and silent. They tried to enter from the west tunnel. Yuli spotted them first, sent a warning shot through the air. Ray and Syl dropped smoke bombs and charged through the side wall. It wasn't a clean fight. Ray's arm got sliced open. Syl took a hit to the leg, but in the end, all 5 attackers were on the ground. 2 dead, 3 crawling back into the sand. They didn't cheer. They didn't rest. They repaired what they could, sealed the entrance, and waited. By morning, 20 more came, this time with heavier gear. A small ship hovered above the temple, scanning for weaknesses. Ray shot the engine with a pulse rifle stolen from the dead. The ship fell and exploded behind the ridge, lighting up the desert sky. But the True Flame was not finished. They sent a message this time. A deep voice echoed through the canyon. "Give up the human, and we will spare your lives. This insult ends now, or your blood will be the payment." Ray didn't flinch. He sent a message back, his voice strong. "You want blood? Come get it. But I'm not standing alone." Syl smiled at that. Just a small curve of her lips. "You're finally speaking like a Kralox," she said. "No," Ray replied, gripping his blade. "I'm speaking like a man who has something to protect." The second day turned into a siege. Snipers tried to climb the cliffs. Yuli took them down with silent shots from the roof. Traps exploded in the narrow paths, throwing bodies into the air. Ray fought side by side with Syl in the lower halls. He felt her shoulder against his as they moved through smoke and blood. She didn't slow, didn't fall, only kept going. They moved like one now, not just fighters, but something deeper. That night, they gathered around a small fire in the temple's heart. Yuli rested with her head on Syl's lap. Eyes closed, Ray sat across from them, his hands bloody, his knuckles raw. "I've been a soldier most of my life," Ray said quietly. "But I never fought for anything I believed in, until now." Syl didn't speak for a moment. Then she reached across and touched his hand. "You are more Kralox than many born here," she said. "You didn't take us, Ray. You chose us when you stayed. And now we choose you." Ray looked at her, at Yuli sleeping peacefully, even with death outside the walls, at the strange warmth rising in his chest. It wasn't about debt anymore. It was about love, loyalty, and survival. But they all knew this wasn't over. The final attack hadn't come yet. The True Flame wasn't done. They would return, with more troops, stronger weapons, and fire in their eyes. And when they did, Ray, Syl, and Yuli would be ready together. The final dawn came without sound. No birds, no wind, only stillness. The kind of silence that came before a storm. Ray stood on the upper ledge of the temple, his hand resting on the edge of the stone wall. Below him, the desert was covered in strange fog, too thick for a normal morning. He didn't like it, neither did Syl. "They're masking their movement," she said, crouching beside him. "They want to strike close, maybe from underground." Ray nodded. already pulling out the old map of the War Temple's tunnels. "There's a weak point here," he said, pointing to the back slope of the eastern cliff. "If they come through the base, they could collapse the whole temple." Yuli was already checking the seals in the tunnels. She moved with purpose, her every step firm. She was no longer just a daughter of Tharzal. She had become something more. A protector of their bond. A warrior of her own choice by midday. The fog shifted, and that's when they saw them. Dozens of Kralok's rebels in black armor, markings across their skin like fire tattoos. They moved like a wave, silent and confident. Behind them, a massive war beast walked, chained and armored. It roared once, loud enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Ray had never seen anything like it. Tall as a shuttle, its teeth longer than his arm. It was built to destroy, to break walls and bones. "This is it," Syl said calmly, strapping her blade across her back. "They're not here to send warnings. They're here to end everything, Ray." Breathed slowly. He wasn't afraid anymore. Just focused, sharp, alive. When the rebels reached the outer path, Ray triggered the first trap. Explosives buried in the sand ripped through the lead line. Screams filled the air. The war beast roared and charged anyway. It smashed through two of its own fighters as it ran forward. Ray and Syl met it halfway. Yuli remained on the ledge, raining fire from above. Her shots hit joints and weak points, slowing the beast. But it wasn't enough. The beast slammed into the front wall, breaking stone like paper. Ray was thrown backward. Landing hard, his head spinning, he rolled to his feet, just in time to dodge a second hit. Syl jumped on the creature's back. Driving twin knives into its neck, it howled, shaking wildly. But she held on. Ray climbed up from the other side. They fought together like they had trained fast, brutal, perfect. Ray shoved a charge under the beast's armor plate and dove off. Syl rolled beside him, pulling him down just as the charge exploded. The creature fell, its scream echoing through the desert. And then there was silence again, but it didn't last. The rest of the rebels were now at the gate. Ray's body ached, his side bleeding, but he stood tall. Syl limped beside him, blade still in hand, and Yuli, covered in dust and burns, took her place between them. Together, they waited. The leader of the True Flame stepped forward. His face was burned, his eyes glowing red with rage. "You dare bind with a human," he spat. "You stain our blood and call it tradition." Syl didn't move. "We call it choice," she said calmly. "We call it loyalty, something you wouldn't understand." The leader raised his weapon. "Then die with your pet," he growled. Ray lifted his blade. "I'm not a pet," he said, stepping forward. "I'm the storm you didn't see coming." The final fight was chaos. Steel clashed with plasma. Blood mixed with sand. Ray fought like a beast, faster than before, fueled by something deep, not rage, but purpose. He wasn't fighting for Earth. He was fighting for them. Syl moved with deadly grace, cutting through attackers like fire. Yuli moved in the gaps, striking from behind, fast and silent. Every time Ray stumbled, they were there. Every time Syl bled, Ray pulled her back. They protected each other. One by one, the rebels fell, until only the leader remained. Ray faced him alone, his blade broken, his body near collapse. The Kralok's leader laughed. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "I will rise again. Even if I die, others will come." Ray didn't blink. He grabbed the leader's weapon and drove it into the ground between them. "Then I'll still be here," he said, waiting. The leader tried to attack, but Syl's blade found his chest before he could finish. He fell in silence, eyes wide. The battle was over, but nothing felt quiet anymore. Not inside Ray. Not inside any of them. Yuli leaned on Syl, shaking with exhaustion. Ray looked up at the sky. The fog was gone. The stars were returning. They had survived. But more than that, they had become something stronger than tradition, stronger than war. They had become one. Asterisk. The temple was quiet again. No screams, no gunfire, no war cries, only the soft sound of wind brushing across the sand. It almost didn't feel real. Ray sat on the edge of a cracked stone, his body wrapped in bandages, every muscle hurt. Every breath reminded him of the fight. But he was alive, and so were Sil and Yuli. They moved. Slowly now, carefully, Sil walked with a cane made from one of the enemy's blades. Yuli had burns on her side, but her hands still worked, and her eyes were still sharp. They had won, but they hadn't come out untouched. Tharzol returned 2 days later. He came alone, without guards or ceremony. His face was older than before. Tired but proud. "I watched from the cliffs," he said, standing before Ray. "I needed to see if the fire in you was real." Ray stood, not angry, not surprised. "I would have died for them," he said simply. "And you let it happen." Tharzol nodded slowly. "I did," he said. "And now I know you truly earned what was given to you. Not by tradition, but by heart." He walked to Sil and bowed, then placed a hand on Yuli's shoulder. "You are no longer part of my life bond," he said. "You are your own bond now, bound by choice, not debt." Sil looked at Ray. "We've known this was coming," she whispered. "But to hear him say it makes it true." Yuli stood beside Ray, her eyes shining. "We don't belong to the past anymore," she said. "We belong to what we build together." The following week, the temple was sealed, not destroyed. Not abandoned, but closed with honor. It had served its purpose. Ray, Sil, and Yuli moved to a different region. Green hills, warm air, a valley of peace. A place once called Forbiddance, now gifted to them by the new council. The bond they shared was no longer hidden, no longer questioned. Many Kralok still did not understand, but none dared challenge it again. Ray began teaching others, humans and Kraloks alike, not just how to fight, but how to listen, how to see the truth beneath the surface, how to protect something worth bleeding for. Sil led a new school of warrior trainers. She showed students that strength was not just in the arm, but in honor, patience, and love. Yuli became a voice among the young. She told stories, taught language, bridged two cultures. She was a daughter of warriors, but she carried peace in her voice. One evening, many months later, they sat together on the rooftop of their new home. The sky was full of stars, glowing white and gold above the hills. Ray leaned back with a soft breath. "I never imagined my life would end up like this," he said, smiling. Sil rested her head on his shoulder. "You didn't imagine it," she said. "You built it, piece by piece, even when it hurt." Yuli pointed up at the stars. "Somewhere out there, people are still fighting," she whispered. "But here, we showed what's possible." Ray nodded slowly. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We changed something." The wind carried their words into the night. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady like a promise made in silence. Ray had come to this world as a soldier. He had been offered 2 lives as a payment. But what he accepted, in the end, was not a gift. It was a family, not given, but chosen. And in that bond one formed in fire, pain, loyalty, and love, he found more than victory. He found purpose. He found home.